All right, welcome everybody. Thank you for joining us either live or in the recording of our Pollinator Week webinar. My name is Deborah Rogers Curtis, and I am with Show Me Green Schools, which is a program with Missouri Gateway Green Building Council. I live in St. Louis, Missouri, and I am really excited to host this webinar because we have some amazing schools that are doing some fabulous things for the pollinators all through Missouri and Southern Illinois. So we're going to go ahead and get started. If you're joining us live, please add your info to the chat. We'd love to know who you are. We would love to know where you are, who you work with, and something fun about pollinators. We'd like to learn from you too. And if you're watching the recording, please don't introduce yourself in the chat. It's not a thing. All right, so today on our webinar, I'm going to go through a very brief introduction, and then we're going to recognize that today we are recording live on Juneteenth, and give you just a brief history of black beekeeping in the United States. Then we get to hear from Ann Cummings, a Brittany Woods Middle School beekeeping experience. I'm very excited about that one. And then we will also hear from Emily Johnson from Saul Mirowitz Jewish Community School about her pollinator experience. It's very fun. It's going to be a great agenda. Principia School will not be joining us live, but we do have a video recording of their experiences, and then we'll do a Q&A with our live speakers. So just a brief introduction. I run the Show Me Green School suite of programs, and like I said, that's through Missouri Gateway Green Building Council. We are the local chapter of the U.S. Green Building Council here in Missouri, and in the St. Louis area. And our Show Me Green Schools programs run the gamut of all of Missouri and Southern Illinois. Ann Cummings is a teacher at Brittany Woods Middle School and a sustainability coordinator. She works in an immense number of capacities, taking on sustainability initiatives throughout the districts. And then Emily is a teacher at Saul Mirowitz Jewish Community School and a local expert on all things pollinator and elementary students. So it'll be a good perspective here today. Just a brief intro to the programs that I run in case anybody's watching who has not joined us before. The Green Schools Quest is your entry-level program. That's your easiest way to get involved in school sustainability initiatives. We take on a school at any level, no matter what your background knowledge is or lack thereof. And if you want to take on any level of school sustainability initiatives, we are your program. We'll help support you through the project, but this year's theme for 2025-2026 is water. So especially if you have a water project in mind, this is the year to join us. We also run Missouri Green Schools, excuse me, which is a much more in-depth school sustainability program that happens over the course of several years and takes schools through various levels of understanding of how to make their building the most sustainable place that it can be. Our website is listed here as well as my email address, and I would love to chat with you about any of our programs and any way to help that we can help you become more sustainable. I also wanted to recognize that today we are recording on Juneteenth. Juneteenth is a relatively new federal holiday, but it is not new to the United States history. It's actually an incredibly old battle in the United States that was only recently recognized as a federal holiday. And so it's really supposed to be celebrating our second Independence Day, meaning not July 4th, when we became an independent nation, but the day that we actually freed the enslaved population of the United States. Because even though the Emancipation Proclamation took effect in 1863, the actual freeing of our enslaved population did not happen fully until 1865. So years went by after the Emancipation Proclamation took effect. And that final last stand happened in Galveston Bay, Texas, where more than 250,000 people were freed. And so for over 100 years, the Black community has been celebrating Juneteenth. Recently, in 2021, it became a federal holiday so that our entire country could recognize just the atrocities that went on, but also the fact that it took several years to fix that atrocity situation. What does Juneteenth have to do with a pollinator presentation other than the fact that we are presenting on Juneteenth? Actually, a lot. The Black pollinator population has been extraordinarily influential in the history of pollination in America and pollinator support in America. In the 1880s, yes, the 1880s, not 1980s, the 1880s, the Tuskegee Institute became kind of the central focus of Black beekeeping because they added beekeeping to their required curriculum. So anybody going through the Tuskegee Institute had to take a beekeeping course. This came about because George Washington Carver and Dr. Booker T. Washington both gentlemen were extremely influential and knew the power of pollinators. So they focused quite a bit of their attention on pollinators, supporting them, and also understanding how to utilize them because they are both beneficial to us and something that we need to protect. Interestingly enough, Margaret Murray Washington founded the Lady Beekeeper Club, which is awesome. And I am now a little jealous that I am not part of a Lady Beekeeper Club. So if anybody is hosting one soon, I would like to join. And in this beekeeper club of women, she really allowed female empowerment to take place through beekeeping and pollinator support, because women were learning an extremely useful skill and a marketable skill that was becoming a way to say, I can actually get a job doing this and I can get paid to do this. And so it was financial independence for women, Black women especially, at a time when that was simply not an option for most of the population. There's a couple of hyperlinks in these presentations, and you will get these if you're listening to the recording or if you are watching live. We will be sending this out, so you will be able to click on these lovely links. This George Washington Carver letter from the 1930s just inspires me. I just loved it so much, and so I had to include it in the presentation. And so we'll just take a moment. I'll let you read that to yourself, and then we'll come back together. All right. My favorite line is nature is an unlimited broadcasting station. And if we could just tune in, we can really listen and learn. It's a pretty profound statement, and it's extremely true for those of us who know and if you've ever spent any time outside, if you just listen, nature really does speak to you. And not in a lunatic way. I mean, in a very real way. It's telling you what it needs and what it can provide to you. This is my final slide on pollinators and Black America in honor of Juneteenth. Um, I think it's significant and important to note that this history and legacy of Black female leadership in pollinators went all the way to the top. Michelle Obama, as the First Lady, set up a beehive at the White House. There is an incredible video of the beekeepers of the White House explaining how popular it is and also how scary it was to put it in, because liabilities and what are we doing? Why are we doing this? What messages are we sending? And really, the message that it sent was, we're looking out for the land, and the land can look out for us. But it also takes us back to this rooted history of Black America and understanding where beehives, pollinators, even just a connection to the land is so vital and important culturally, but also financially and really just in every way. So these links here are specific to Black Americans who have reconnected, reclaimed the land, and have really shown leadership in the pollinator space. So these are some great resources if you are interested in checking those out. And then we also have a couple of extra resources. And again, all of this will be sent out to you as well. So I'm going to pause. I'm going to put myself on mute, and I'm going to pass it on over to Ann Cummings from Brittany Woods Middle School in the University School District. And Ann is here to talk to you about how her experience as an educator working with pollinators. Ann, welcome.
Thank you. I'm so happy to be here, especially on this day. At Brittany Woods, we have a special love for pollinators, and we feel that we have an important part to play in the history that you just described. Before I talk about pollination, I want to talk a little bit about what's been growing at Brittany Woods. In the picture there where you see how it started, we established our first garden in 2018, 2019. What's unusual about it is that students came to me at that time, and we're in a 1950s older school building, very uniform, and they said our school needs to feel like a more welcoming place. Can you help us put in a garden? And everything that we have today that you're going to learn about has been conceived of, dreamed of, designed, paid for primarily by students. Today, building from that first garden, we now have 6 sustainability elective classes taught by 2 teachers. We have a U City Lions 4-H after school club that's now going to be extending into our high school, a summer learning experience for grades 6 through 8, a summer agricultural internship program in which we have our U City high schoolers this year, 20 of them, who are paid $10 an hour for 40 hours of their time over the summer, learning about agriculture, supporting our growing spaces, keeping our chickens, and maintaining our apiary. And as a result of the demand coming from the middle school, we now have DESI's only certified agricultural pathway in the region at U City High School, and that's run by Dr. Pam Lester, who has a PhD in uh, plant science. So we're really thrilled to have her. But when we started, if you go on to the next slide, but when we started from nothing. I have no degree in sustainability. I was new to gardening with children, although I was a lifelong gardener and have always had a deep connection with the earth. But after about 3 years, the principal at the time came to me and said, well, the one thing that kids seem to want to do is to garden with you. Will you create an elective course? And after some thought, and also conferring with kids, I realized that if we focused on sustainability as opposed to just gardening, that we could focus on the pillars of sustainability, which does include the environment, but also sustainable economics and social empowerment, which is really important. But the question is, as a new program, who were we? What mattered to us, and how could we make a difference? And a lot of this in the early years, and even still today, felt like a train going down a track, but you're building the track to get the train to keep moving forward. But I don't have to do it by myself. I've got a superintendent who's very supportive, Dr. Sharonica Hardin Bartley, a co-teacher, Mrs. Rubina McCadney, who's amazing. But we also have all of our students who are our founders. And what we tell our kids when they come into the program is we have our founders and we have the future. And if you're here today, then you are a founder because the kids keep creating what we have. But Show Me Green Schools, of which Deborah is such an important part, really gave us the focus in the early years to help us shape our identity and to build our collective self-efficacy. Because at first, I don't think any of us really thought we knew what we were doing. So if you'll go on to the next slide. But an easy entry point for us was actually pollinators. We were very fortunate that the Green Schools Quest, the second year we participated, had a focus on pollination. It was something that the students could really get behind because they had access to pollination education. It was discussed in science classes. And it was the first time that we felt like, well, we could have something to contribute to this. And so my students, if you go on to the next slide, created as part of our Green Schools Quest project that year, actually established Brittany Woods Middle School Pollinator Squad. And we were given, so that we could keep bees, a 22-year-old cargo van that the kids laughed about. The first time they saw it, they all said, like, is a creepy guy going to offer us candy? It was that old and it had no windows, but we could store all of our beekeeping stuff in it. And they named it the Pollinator 3000. And what was fun about the Pollinator 3000 was it gave us a backdrop for presentations that we would do at outdoor events. And the kids never underestimate the power. I have this somewhere on a slide. Never underestimate the power of a middle schooler in a bee suit. We're now up to 8. Every time we make a little bit more money, I buy more bee suits because there are never enough to go around. Between the Pollinator 3000 as a backdrop and middle schoolers in bee suits talking about eastern swallowtail butterflies and the fact that we need to grow parsley and handing out parsley plants and parsley seeds so that these important native pollinators have a way to, continue their life cycle. We started just spreading the word, and eventually we moved into about a year ago into creating mason bee houses and helping the local community do that. Every year we add a little bit more to what our pollinator squad does. And the really exciting thing is that we have kids who come back from high school to continue to act as squad members when we are interacting with the community. So getting kids excited, and they wrote the vision statement that you see on the screen, and I just love this. We envision a world where pollinators are protected and valued, and even small children, these are middle schoolers, and even small children know that they can safely coexist with bees. This project will meet that goal by educating our youngest students about pollination, pollinators, and the role they can play in protecting the future of our plants and insects. And we do that. You can see our pledge. It's very simple. But that pledge is said again and again and again at our community events. Go ahead and go to the next slide, please. So we started as beekeepers, and I'm a huge proponent of this. And I want to stop and say a moment that, the bees that we keep for honey, and I didn't know this until I became a beekeeper and started looking at where to place our apiary, because we have a prairie supported by Missouri Botanical Garden through the Green Center in University City right next to our school. And so my first thought was, well, kids, hey, what do you think about putting this apiary next to the prairie in the Green Center? They were the first people to point out to us, well, your bees are European honeybees, and they aren't native species. And we have native bees that pollinate native plants, and we don't want you to compete for resources so directly. And that was a huge eye opener and a really important point that we have been respecting and learning about ever since. So we located our apiary, which is why we needed the Pollinator 3000, out behind the school, off of our track, far enough away that while bees have a 2 or 3 mile radius, for the most part, we've got room for everyone because it's back near our track, our clover planted track area, and a community golf course next door run by U City that uses integrative pest management. But what we learned is that there's a really important figure in St. Louis and world history that really is not recognized enough, and that is Dr. Charles Henry Turner. Dr. Henry Charles Turner was born in 1987 and died. Yeah, sorry, I have that wrong, Deborah. That's wrong on the slide. He was born in 1887 and died. I'll fix that later for the link that we send out, and died in 1923. And for people in the know, he's truly considered the father of animal behavioral studies. He was the first African American to earn both a bachelor's and a master's in science from the University of Cincinnati. He published his first peer-reviewed scientific paper before he even got his PhD, and it was in the journal Science, which is one of the heaviest of hitters. He received his doctorate from the University of Chicago. But when he graduated, he couldn't get a teaching position at a university because none of the white institutions would take him. And Tuskegee was already paying the salaries of Dr. Booker T. Washington and Dr. George Washington, sorry, I'm all, the two, my brain, have you ever had one of those moments? George Washington Carver. And so they couldn't afford Dr. Charles Henry Turner as well. He moved to St. Louis and taught until the end of his career at Sumner High School in St. Louis, and he used those high schoolers as his teaching assistants. If you want to learn more, just so you know, I have documented all of this. And if you take a look when you see these slides at home, you can click on those links to learn more about Dr. Charles Henry Turner. If you go ahead and go to the next slide. But his work cannot be ignored. He published 49 papers on invertebrates with information directly here from St. Louis before Dr. Turner's research Insects, pollinators, and other insects, they were seen as creatures that had no cognition, no thought. They had no capacity for learning, memory, or decision making. They were studied mainly because we wanted to control them as pests. People, including the scientific community, believed that pollinators and insects had nothing to offer, that they were just, that there was this automata, that they just responded to the stimulus around them. But Dr. Henry Turner showed the world that bees and ants can learn, remember, and they can solve problems. He observed them in their natural setting. It was the first time this was done, and it was a game changer to understand what exactly their capacity is. He allowed us to see them as intelligent, adaptive beings, and he paved the way for modern research on insect behavior and pollination, which in turn became the entire field of thought that we now understand. All of the work of B.F. Skinner and everybody that came after him, when we started expanding out from insects and taking a look um, at other animals that at the time we thought were more complex, including human beings. If you go on to the next slide. And so before I go on, I just invite everybody who's watching this to take a moment and really let this sink in. We're here today to talk about the importance of pollinators and what we can do to support them, but none of this work to protect them, to encourage them, would be possible unless we understand fundamentally that they are intelligent, decision-making creatures. And we know this and we have respect for them specifically because of this, the work of this man, Dr. Charles Henry Turner. And so the students at Brittany Woods and scientists and kids and people all around the world, we stand on the shoulders of this particular giant. And we are so proud to have named our apiary at Brittany Woods Middle School the Dr. Charles Henry Turner Apiary, because we celebrate him every time we go and learn with the bees. Go ahead and go to the next slide. The other thing that we've done at Brittany Woods is we really work on creating shared habits and habitats. So I've told you about the pollinator squad, but the next year we were looking at biodiversity, and we thought we were really diverse because we grow different kinds of vegetables that aren't the commodity foods that we tend to see in our school cafeteria. My school is 100% free or reduced lunch. And so for some of us, exposure to different kinds of food items was a first step. And man, we were so wrong about what biodiversity even is. So in the last couple of years, we have focused on integrating native plants into our gardens. We've learned how to propagate them. We've learned how to grow them from seed. We are giving them away to our local community at our annual event called Growing Together, where we give away thousands of dollars of free vegetable plants so that people can fight food insecurity and connect to the earth by growing food at home. But now we've added a whole nother layer by working with U City and Bloom, our high school, our elementary schools, to offer native species plants. And we bring in at least one master gardener to each of our events so that people who don't have experience growing with native plants can have their questions answered, so that we're kind of getting them over that first hurdle. We post information about caring for native bees on our apiary fence so that people receive education at the point where they may be a little confused about native bees versus European bees. And the biggest thing I think for the kids at Brittany Woods is that we're learning the importance of all pollinators, and that wasps are our friends. They just need to have a little more space. If you go to the next slide. So then this takes us to the third year of our Green Schools project. And the reason that I'm sharing these is because it's the support of the program that has deepened our understanding, and being able to take these next steps at Brittany Woods with the support of Show Me Green Schools has been really important for us. And this past year, what we focused on was learning Afro-Indigenous farming methods. Our project this year was making sure we saw the trailer for the documentary Farming While Black, which is based on the very important book by Leah Penniman of Soul Fire Farms. But all we could see was the trailer because the book's not available, or sorry, the movie wasn't available to the public through streaming at this point. And so our project exposed people to the documentary. We have created a listing of all of the BIPOC farmers in the St. Louis area who use these indigenous methods, and where to find them and where to buy from them. Deborah, can we include that in the resources for this as well? And then, so where this relates to pollination is a really important intersection. There are many reasons that we should embrace Afro-Indigenous farming methods. Many people believe that the beginning point of climate change in the United States began with farming that uses the European practice of tilling the entire field. When we start to use Afro-Indigenous farming methods, we wind up with a variety of crops growing together, polyculture over monoculture. It includes not just plants that we're growing for food in a field through high production methods, but rather the idea of a food forest and creating an ecosystem and habitats that will support not just plants but animals, building healthy soil and respecting local ecosystems, which absolutely encourage the growth of our pollinators. And go ahead to the next slide. We are just thrilled to share some of the things that we're doing. It's not even some of the things. This is most of the things that we're doing because I don't want to give the impression of, and wait, there's more. I feel proud of what I can share on behalf of our students. The projects that I've shared with you were all student-led at the middle school level, but we're talking about projects that developed over the course of an entire year with, we teach 120 students in our elective per semester, plus we have an after-school 4-H club, and our summer interns get us started, usually on the theme, just talking about things. So don't want you to think that any of these projects happened overnight. We try to create lasting change, and that takes time and a tremendous amount of support. It's just an honor to be here today on this very important day to talk about African American contributions. And I am a white teacher and I acknowledge that. But the students at Brittany Woods Middle School are predominantly African American, I'd say 95%. And I'd say that since it's Juneteenth, I just want to say publicly that my role of an educator is not to interpret nature for them or not to tell them what their projects or their priorities should be. My job is to help them envision the kind of future that they want to create and to build support so that they can do that work on their own and build their belief in themselves. And I invite anyone watching this webinar to join me on that journey. It's a really important one, and it gives me tremendous hope for the future. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Anne. Every time I hear Anne speak, I'm just like, I learn so much, but I'm also just inspired because the work that Anne does is so student-led and so student-driven, and it always brings it back to the kiddos. Always. It's the kids are at the center. And like she said, like, what do kids want this world to look like? And what do kids want this, future to look like? And I already have several questions that have come through the chat for you, but we're gonna hold questions until the end. So for those of you listening live, if you have questions that you want to add to the chat or send to me, that's fine. And if you're watching the recording, you can also email me any questions that you have for Anne, and I will pass those along and make sure that we get an answer to you. I'm going to stop sharing just very briefly because we need to switch to the a different format for this other presentation. I apologize. I had technical problems. What can I say? So I'm going to switch real quickly, and we're going to hear now from our second presenter. Can you guys see the PowerPoint? Good. Okay. Emily Johnson from Saul Mirowitz Jewish Community School We're going to go ahead and hear a little bit about her experience and what it took to create a pollinator paradise at her campus. Emily, take it away.
Hello. And I have to say too, every time I hear you speak, your passion flows through me and it wants me to find ways to just do more in education. I know that fire is sparking in your students too. So you are just amazing. I was able to meet Anne this past week at our Sustainability Institute. And from the moment I heard her speak one sentence, I was like, oh, I want her to be my friend. I need to learn more from Anne. But I am Emily, and I teach second grade at Saul Meerwich Jewish Community School. I love anything nature and animal related. You might have seen my cat walking behind me. And I also love conservation. I was an educator for the St. Louis Zoo for about a year. And that is really where I was like, oh, I can actually combine this into curriculum, and kids like this, adults like this. And I found that to be an engaging way to connect with my students and do a bit more. So my first year in second grade, our Green Schools Quest was about biodiversity in our schoolyards and the focus on pollinators. I'm going to just go ahead and show this video, which speaks for itself. I think the audio's off. I can't hear it.
Thank you for letting me know. I will fix that. One moment, please. Actually, maybe I'll fix it. Monarch. Sorry. Oh, sorry, guys. I have a weird permission setting on this thing about sound for some bizarre reason.
If it doesn't work, that's okay. I can kind of talk over it if you would like me to.
Hang on, let me try
I
one.
think I think that if you end up doing that, I think it would be amazing because I have to tell you that just looking at the little clips that we've seen so far, to see little kids engaged in nature like that just is good for my heart. So either way, please show it.
Okay, give me a thumbs up if this works with the sound.
This year's Green Schools Quest project was to raise and release migrating monarch butterflies to go along with this year's theme.
We learned all about the life cycle of monarchs. We identified migration patterns and we learned about the food sources of butterflies. Along their way, they'll need two really different things: food and a place to lay their eggs.
We saw lots of different flowers at Linsinger Road Ecology Center. They were yellow and we found lots of monarchs on those flowers getting food.
We have lots of milkweed outside of our school. That's where we find all the baby monarch caterpillars. Monarchs only lay their eggs on milkweed.
Butterflies and other insects need so many different kinds of plants to survive and make new generations. We saw lots of different kinds of bugs and insects when we were looking for monarch caterpillars.
We loved watching our baby caterpillars grow, and so did our whole school. We put our cage in the hall outside of our classroom. My classmate's grandpa built the cage.
We noticed that there were lots of the same kinds of plants in our garden at school. We wondered if we could plant different ones for even more types of insects and pollinators to come visit.
We're making a butterfly garden.
We applied for the plant grant for Litzinger Road Ecology Center and won. Next fall, we will be planting a new pollinator garden.
It will be near the playground. We hope to see new types of pollinators. We also want more students to enjoy the garden.
Once our caterpillars went through their whole metamorphosis phase, they came out of their chrysalises as adult butterflies. we knew we had to let them go, and some would fly all the way to Mexico.
We wrote each butterfly a blessing and released them with a big ceremony. Many students from other grades came to enjoy the release too. Before we let them go, we put tags on them. We hope scientists will find them and report their tag number so we know they got to Mexico.
We checked and checked, but no one found and recorded our butterfly tag numbers in Mexico yet. That's okay. I hope to go to Mexico one day to see all of them hanging from the trees.
I'm gonna switch back. There we
That
go.
video makes me so happy no matter how many times I watch it, because that was the students who put that video together. Obviously they had adult support putting into the physical video that we're watching, but the whole project was them themselves. And on the next slide, we ended up introducing some new pollinators to second grade this year. I love butterflies. I love monarchs. They are important, but so are all of the oddballs that we don't always think about being as pollinators. And this was kind of just me experimenting. I chose 4 different pollinators to focus on: a butterfly, a bat, a hummingbird, and a beetle. And what I started with before the kids even came into school is, if you look at the bottom right picture behind, are their cubbies. And I assigned each student one of the different pollinators along with their number. And I didn't even think about the ways this was going to help me just with classroom management, because I started grouping the kids as their pollinator. And then the kids, they ended up doing their own independent research. Like, I'm a beetle. And I was like, but do you know how cool beetles are? I was like, have you ever heard of the dung beetle? And then we went online, we found some books, and they did their own research. The activity that they're doing right now is a way to demonstrate how pollination works. So they all started with their own pollinator. So if I were a butterfly, I stuck with my butterfly. And on the smartboard, there were the different plants that a butterfly would go to, and that was usually based off of color. So the student who had the butterfly could only go to the colored chalk that their butterfly would pollinate. And then after going through this activity a little bit, I did let the kids switch their pollinators so they could see the difference. And it was really cool how serious they took it, because they're like, hey, you can't go to this color. And they're like, oh, my bad. And then they made that realization about, what they should be doing. And it was just kind of beautiful. Now, expanding our pollinator garden was a lot of fun too. You saw in the video that my students 2 years ago now, they were the ones to get to design it. They got to choose the location. And again, they took this very seriously. If you give a child the opportunity, the job to do something, they are going to, make the most of it. And we walked around the school grounds. We were talking about different locations, why it would be good, why it would be bad. And at first they chose the location in the top left photo, which is to the side of our playground, kind of. And there was a drain spout there. And they're like, oh, this is going to water our pollinator garden. And I said, okay. We looked at, how far away from the building we should be. And then we started to kind of base the area, prep the area. And I had the kids, we were working on measurement, look at the different plants that we would be putting in the garden. And I tied some meter sticks together, and I made the flowers the accurate size that it would grow in the wild for them to, again, position themselves to see how the plants would grow. They had a blast with this. Now, this was probably April or May. So school got out for the summer and I got an email, hey, we probably shouldn't put a pollinator garden next to a playground that attracts, the friends we love, wasps, bees, things that sting, and, kids have a lot of allergies. I was like, you are absolutely right. So I was quickly finding another location at school, and I talked to different educators. I talked to some of the students I saw over the summer. It's like, hey, what do you think about here? And we ended up moving it to a new location. Now, like I said before, this area was prepped. We had rocks, we had the dirt bags there, we were ready to go. And August came around, and it turned out to be a beautiful collaborative moment for the second and the third graders, because I talked to the third grade teacher. I was like, hey, this is kind of the situation. Do you think the kids would want to help us out? And to watch the third graders team up with the second graders to efficiently and effectively move all of the bags of dirt, all of the stones from a good 200 yards from the location was incredible. And again, they had buckets, they had the shovels. You could see the bottom right or left picture, they're holding rocks too. And it took 3-4 kids to carry these things, but they worked together. And they're like, why do we need cardboard? And we talked about how we wouldn't be able to plant our actual plants for a little bit, so we needed that grass to go away. And there were kids acting as human lawnmowers, ripping grass out. They're like, we want to plant the plants now. But their fascination was moving. And in the top right photo, you'll see the different plants we ended up putting into the garden, and those are their sketches of what their vision of our new pollinator garden would be. And none of this would be possible without the collaboration of my community. When I came into second grade, I knew what a monarch was, I knew what pollinators were. But I started to talk with other adults in the room. I talked with some family members, and I met Gerald Axelbaum, who is a huge part of our school community and also a monarch expert. And after talking to him, he started sharing all these resources with me. He goes, hey, you got to check out Journey North. And this is an interactive map that you can see the migration from Canada all the way down to Mexico. And last year, some of you might have noticed that we didn't have as many monarchs in Missouri as we have in past years. And the kids and I were watching this map almost every single day, and we were like, we're not quite sure what's going to happen. And we talked about, the natural world. Why do we think that this is happening? What would help this? And then, of course, they said, well, let's plant things, and we were already doing so. And then bouncing over to Monarch Watch, you can actually order larvae through them. So that's what we ended up doing. And then the kids, it was later in the season. They weren't ready for that, but they were so flexible because they understood we can't force a monarch to be here. This is an animal. This is a natural being. And that's okay. And they learned that empathy piece too. They really, really cared about these monarchs, and they wanted to make a difference. And again, with the community aspect is Gerald actually he was a former teacher, but he brought in this camera to where the kids were able to see the parts of, the larva, parts of the butterfly, and identify them, which is aligning with our standards. But they were able to actually do that, which was meaningful. And then, of course, the tracking part. I get a lot of questions. Even my friends are like, what do you mean you tracked a butterfly? It's a little sticker that Monarch Watch will give you, and you put it on the butterfly as you see in the picture, and that is just, it doesn't hurt them. The monarch flies away, and hopefully someone finds that monarch, and then they put that tracking number into a website, which you can check. I haven't found one of our monarchs, but that's okay. There's a lot of them. But the kids, they get excited nonetheless because they know that they're making a difference. They know that it's important to note, hey, Missouri didn't have this many monarchs this year. And scientists should know that. We all should know that. And we should all work to make a difference. And at the very bottom, one of my favorite parts of the whole pollinator unit is when we come together and the kids have a monarch release ceremony. And I actually collaborate with other teachers in my building, their Judaics teacher, their Hebrew teacher, and their music teacher, to put together just a nice ceremony to acknowledge the life of the monarchs. So they each had a part of the life cycle that they presented. They sang songs, they wrote their blessings, and then the kids were able to release the monarchs on their journey to Mexico. Litzinger Road Ecology Center has been another awesome partner for me to have. On the next slide, I'll talk a little bit more about how you too could be a partner if you're not already. And they, amazing educators. Julie and Leslie will work with you to come up with lesson ideas that connect to your curriculum, but are also engaging. Sometimes they'll send me an email and be like, hey, what do you think? Can I try this out with your kids? And I'm like, of course. But something I like to think about too is they also emphasize you don't need paper to learn. And that's something I remind myself too as I'm on my education journey is I don't need them to fill something out. And if they don't fill out the paper, that is okay. someone's filling it out. There's always those 2 or 3 kids who are collecting data, and we can still use that. But I think the kids getting out in nature and making their own observations is important too. The kids knew that they were looking for pollinators. As you see on that chart to the top left, those are a list of just some of the pollinators. There are a lot of them. It's really for that recognition of, hey, this animal is important. And then I connected this activity to other standards. You know, they tracked them using tallies, they wrote the locations in, and then we made picture or bar graphs depending on what the child wanted to do. But this is a magical place for anybody to explore. And there's a lot to see and appreciate there. If you are curious about the teacher partnership, you get to go along for a 2-day summer learning experience. I don't think of it as it is a training, but it's fun. You get to hang out in nature. Those pictures to the right are pictures I took during my 2 days. You know, I sat by the creek bed. I sketched my pictures. I saw a frog hop across that creek. I saw a deer, and I don't remember what the other animal was, like 3 animals back to back. I was like, whoa, this is crazy. And then there happened to be a baby squirrel that fell out of a tree while I was there, and they put it in this basket. They had other volunteers there doing research. And then, believe it or not, this baby squirrel was hopefully reunited with its family because it was not in the basket by the end of the day. So even as an adult, I can make connections, or I can figure out, hey, what was this animal? It was just a little pink thing on the ground and we weren't really sure. So we used our research skills to figure it out. And a part of this partnership, you get 3 free field trips with transportation, which I know is a huge obstacle for many schools. Transportation is expensive. That's a great perk that they offer. And again, they're still flexible. And the pollinator garden that we put in last year and the year before that was through a grant through Litzinger. Again, so many resources. That's who helped us decide which plants would be best for our school grounds. They helped us with the timing. I have my own garden, but that's just based on luck. So it's nice to have the experts and other, educators to help collaborate and make the most of one's space and educational experience. While I was at that training, one of the educators talked about nature bags that they use for their students. And in the nature's bags, you'll have a pencil, coloring tools of some sort, a journal, and the kids always have this. They're numbered, the bags are numbered, so I reuse them each year. And then they take these bags anytime we go outside. And I really let this be student-led. I'm not telling them, hey, you need to journal about what you're seeing outside. I want them to be the ones to draw a picture or to jot down an observation. And they take this, again, pretty seriously. Some of the kids enjoy it more than others, but at some point throughout the year, I've seen every single one of my students drawing an observation or writing something down that was crazy in which they saw. And this just goes with respecting nature too. I don't let my kids pluck plants to bring them back to school because we talk about, why are those plants there? Are they there for us to pluck? And they make the connections. No, a pollinator might need that, or a frog could use it. Some animal might be eating it too. And I will say, my second graders, every year I've had them, are so respectful to nature, to a level that they are comfortable holding spiders and things that I'm learning to be brave enough now to do. So it's pretty cool to watch them go through this whole process. And that leads me to student-led exploration. My absolute favorite part of being an educator is watching the kids. I get to teach them and guide them with a few things, but they get to take it into the real world and at home. And I'm the one who gets to hear about it from either their families or themselves, and it warms my whole heart. That picture with the butterfly above it, we were actually all outside and we were just independently reading. And all of a sudden, all the kids got up and they got so excited because they saw a monarch. And this was before we had the larva. So like, oh my goodness, they're coming. And of course, we went to track it on the map afterwards. But I think it's important to remember too, it's okay if a lesson gets interrupted because something real in the world is going on. There was a monarch there. I wanted my kids to observe that monarch, and they followed it through this little prairie for about 10 minutes. And they were so excited, and they went home and they told their families about it, and it was beautiful. And then being me, it's funny because the kids sometimes love to bring me their observations. I remember right before spring break, one of my students brought me this Tupperware little bowl. And she was like, "More, Emily. My mom said you would know exactly what to do with this." And I was like, "Oh, cool." I said, "What is it?" And I look in there and it was a grub worm. And I'm like, "This is cool. I don't know anything about grub worms." And I see other kids, they're like cringing, and I'm just keeping a smile. I don't want anyone grossed out by this grub worm. And to be honest, I didn't know really anything about them. So I was like, let's do some research. So then we spent time researching grubworms, and it's a larva of a beetle who is a pollinator. And I was like, this all connects. So I get excited with the kids. And then I had another student find another grubworm and put it in there. And I said, okay, no more grubworms. We need to leave animals be in nature. But they were the ones who took care of it. You know, they made sure that that soil was a little bit damp. They researched what grubworms eat. That was all them. I told them, I said, this can stay here, but you are the ones who are going to care for them. And they, again, took that responsibility upon themselves. And then at recess, I have kids of all ages bringing me different larvae. That fuzzy little caterpillar we discovered was going to be a moth one day. I'm learning through this whole process. And the last thing at the bottom, I've told myself this, I will forever tell myself this, playing with sticks is okay. Whenever I see a kid playing with a stick, the first thought is they're turning that into a lifesaver and they're going to whack someone with it. But very, very rarely is that actually the case. You know, sometimes they are just looking at the wood, they're just scraping it, they're using it to draw, they're using it as a tool to be a kid, and that is okay. As long as they're not actually whacking someone, let them play with sticks. They're really probably most likely not going to hurt someone, but you know your students as I do mine. So thank you for learning with me. This has been such an honor to be a part of it. I love learning from all the other educators. And if you have any questions, let me know. Again, thank you.
Thank you so much, Emily. This was just outrageously funny. I was like laughing out loud multiple times, particularly like kids bringing you things. My God, that is not like fun, but gross. So thank you for your bravery. I'm going to stop sharing for just 1 second and switch back into our other presentation. And again, Emily, I've got questions for you also, but we're going to hold those for just 1 minute. And we'll get back into not this one. Nope, nope, nope. And here we are. All right, we've got one last school to hear from, and then we're going to take a Q&A. Hmm. Is our sound on? No, our sound is not on. Okay, we might have some technical difficulties on this one. But all to say, I will play the video because there's a lot of great images in it. But this video is from Principia School. So Principia is a school here in St. Louis that is pretty unique in terms of the ages that it represents. They have very, very early childhood all the way up through 12th grade on one campus, and the campus is utterly enormous. They have a huge physical land property, and so they do have a slightly different situation than most schools um, because they are a true campus and many, many buildings, and they have lots and lots of gardens. The challenge for them is keeping up with all of it and making sure that they are using each garden to an end, I guess, instead of just, something that's beautiful to look at. But they're really making it purposeful and intentional. So I am going to try and talk through some of this video. This is their Quest project. And they had each year they submit a project, but this past year they submitted for every single grade level that they had. They had lower elementary, upper elementary, middle, and high school. And their kiddos in this project, they were fascinated by monarchs, and they did something very similar, like, let's track them. And they found that they had beautiful things on their campus, but no butterflies. And why not? So they kind of took it to the next level of trying to figure out what can we do because we already have all these gorgeous gardens. So why aren't we supporting the native population and the monarchs that are supposed to be coming through here? So they really dug deep with their research and they found their caterpillars on their playground and they brought them inside and they, figured out how to help them grow. It was like a very exciting slash terrifying moment for all of them. They did have some kiddos who were like pretty afraid, but mostly very, very excited. And that fear turned to curiosity within seconds. So they were very excited about it. I am going to see if this plays.
This is happening. It's happening. This is actually the coolest feeling.
It's happening right now.
It's right here. It's pumping up its face.
I've never had goosebumps, guys.
Oh, no way, no way. It looks so cool.
Am I dreaming?
No, you're not.
You are not
Pinch
dreaming.
yourself.
If you're dreaming, I would pinch you right now.
Emma, don't touch the table. Oh my gosh.
This is so not a dream.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, I'm definitely not asleep. Nope. Yeah, this is not a dream. Ow. Okay. If this was a dream, I would be so. I would literally like touch it if it was a dream. But it's not a dream, so I'm not. If it was a dream, I'd be able to reach through the cage. Yeah.
Here.
But I would hold it.
I don't want to touch it either.
I actually holded one before because we had one in the we had girls with them.
I love this video so much because this is like such real life with kids. This is exactly where kids' heads go. Well, if it was a dream, I'd be touching it, but it's not. It's not a dream, so I'm not going to touch it. Um, Also, when she touches the table and another kiddo points it out, she touched the table. All I can think of is Finding Nemo in the scene where he touched the butt. Like it's such a perfect kid moment. So they supported their monarch population or the world's monarch population just by making some small changes on their campus of native plants and, deciding which plants to go with and really very similar, Emily, like we need an expert here. We don't know what we're doing. Like we want to know how to do this and what to do. And so our speakers from Principia were not able to be on our call live today because they are, having summer life. So, but they did offer if you guys have questions and want to know more about their project and how they achieved what they achieved, feel free to reach out to me and I'll connect you with them because they're very open about what they did in their school. I want to pause here and take some questions and answers, or take some questions and get some answers from our speakers who are live with us today. We did have several questions that were submitted ahead of time from folks who knew that they were not going to be able to join us live. And then I had some questions that were sent to me in the chat. So I'm going to pause here. I'm going to stop sharing, and I'm going to go into I'll start with for both of you. There was a question about the fear factor of how did you overcome kids and families. Specifically, the question was, how did you overcome parents' fears about kids interacting with bees, wasps, bugs, etc. And even just kids being outside sometimes. They don't like it. So how did you both kind of overcome that issue?
I think my school does a pretty great job with, throwing kind of kids outside. We are very, very lucky to have the outdoor learning labs that we do. So part of Mirowitz is being outside, and a lot of families know that. However, there are kids who don't like bugs, and that is okay. And I tell them that. I'm like, we don't have to like every single creature, and we definitely don't have to touch them, but respecting them is what's important. So the approach I take is building that empathy with them. If they are scared of the cicadas, those were a big one. Why don't you like the cicadas? They're flying into my face. Yes, you are right, but that's because they can't see well. And then, it just leads down these different avenues of researching with the kids. And I think education goes really, really far with the understanding and empathy piece.
I think a lot of it starts with my relationship with the kids and my relationship with the families. I need to be really trustworthy as an educator. And in the syllabus that Mrs. McCadney and I share with the kids, one of the we share important things like we won't trick you or surprise you. being afraid and feeling afraid and being unsafe are two completely different things. And sometimes growth requires a little bit of fear, but that we will never put kids in danger. And we set really important, all of our routines and our rules center around safety because we garden with kids. We give middle schoolers weed whackers. Most people are not willing to do that, but it starts with hand trowel safety and how do we handle our shovels and how do we walk around the garden. So when we create a situation, just in general of safety, there's trust that when stinging insects or pollinators that look strange to us or insects or animals come along and we're not familiar, um, kids are less likely to shriek, but also the whole idea of, you know, mirror neurons is true. If my neurology is calm, kids are going to see that. And the more kids that can remain calm and are listening and learning, the that calm spreads in the same way that fear can spread. The other thing is that a lot of this, because it's tied to school, there's an expectation that kids will participate. So when I go out to the apiary, their engagement with the bees progresses from sixth grade to eighth grade. There's some things that by the time the kids who are interested in keeping bees are in eighth grade, I'm sometimes not even in the apiary with them. I'm fully suited, but I may be on the outside of that apiary fence, letting them know how to proceed, or they already know how to proceed with a hive check or whatever is required. But the other students are trained in what to do if a bee comes along and they need to stand. We have a telephone pole. They need to stand near the telephone pole because at the telephone pole, they can hear what we're doing and their safety is equal to anywhere else outdoors that they might stand. And it's not that far away. So I think trust, keeping safety routines, introducing kids slowly. But then the very first thing I say, the very first moment of beekeeping training, the first thing that kids hear from me is that the first job of a beekeeper is to learn how to um, respect how you feel. And then backing away slowly and coming back another day is more important than scaring yourself to the point that you don't ever want to return. So we normalize the fear and we don't do things that would belittle that fear in others. We embrace it because it's part of the learning.
That is spectacular. Both of those answers are excellent. I'm taking notes as if I'm still a classroom teacher because I like don't want to forget those lessons that I just
Well,
learned.
you also have the video.
Yes, yes. Okay, another question we received was how did you find your experts? How did you find your resources? And specifically, there was a question, Emily, for you who found like a grandparent or a parent who really had expert knowledge himself. And then they also mentioned Principia, how did you find resources? Just, what was your process? How did you find the people and the organizations? And you mentioned City in Bloom, which is an amazing partner for you. But how did you guys find people to help you?
This is a
Oh,
fun question. Andy, you want to go first?
yeah, you went first last time, so I was taking one for the team this
You
time.
go for it.
Social media is a really big help. We also live near major universities. And for both Emily and I, we are, we only go up to sixth grade. There are high school teachers that we could be in contact with. We also need to remember that students don't come to us as blank slates. They aren't vessels that we fill up. They're already full, and we're adding them, helping give them experiences so they can make further meaning of a world that they already know about. And some of them have experiences that I may not have at all. I've learned more about chicken keeping from two individual students that I can think of than from anybody else. The first time that we had a chicken with a prolapsed cloaca, we opened up the door of one of our nesting boxes and all of us just stood there. It was like a scene from a comedy. None of us knew what this red bulb thing was sticking out the back of this chicken. I mean, couldn't even guess. And within 30 seconds, one of the students had done a reverse Google search and started educating the rest of us. I have found that it's better that the less I know, the more we all learn. Because students are really trained to treat teachers as if we are the source of the wisdom and the source of the experience. And that does a disservice to all of us.
I agree with that, and I think a lot like it's okay to be vulnerable. We cannot know everything. I cannot express how many times I share that with my students. But what I always tell them with that is I can find the answer. And then as far as who I like networking, that's the biggest thing. I
Mhm.
talk to a lot of people. I'm okay with that. I know not everyone is an extrovert in that manner, but as Anne said, social media, your local library. I know mine actually just had a program with pollinators, and those are free. I understand that these take time too. Our time is so valuable, but it's also so worth it when you see those kids, like the sparks floating, and then their self discovery in nature. And yeah, I also network with middle school teachers that I know in my personal life, high school teachers. If you ask or if you reach out, the worst someone's going to say is no. But I don't think most educators would tell you no if you're looking for help on that. Or the internet, those are all great resources as long as, we filter them and we find what works for us. Because the resources I have might not work for someone else, and that's okay too. But you can always just ask questions, talk about things, and then a lot of times people will come to you with those connections as well.
Yes.
Another really important source that I think we cannot underestimate is that Missouri actually has two land grant institutions. And a land grant institution is a college or university that was given land probably in the late 1800s. White schools were established first. African American, historically Black colleges and universities were added second. But the mission is to help educate people to live with the land, to understand how to support themselves. That's where the Master Gardener and the Master Naturalist programs are housed. There's an immense amount of research that goes on. And so here we have the Mizzou, University of Missouri in Columbia, which is the historically white institution, but we also have Lincoln University, which is a historically Black university that is also a land grant institution, and both of those have extension programs. And so, what I have taught my students to do is that anytime we want to know about something, whether it is food safety when we're canning food, or about how to prune a plant or take care of a chicken or anything in the natural world, put in your search terms and then add the word extension. And what Google will typically do is send you to a land grant institution. And that, I promise you, anything you learn there is going to be research based, well documented. And if you then delve further into 4-H curriculum, 4-H was a program that was originally designed to support kids living on farms, to give them life skills, boys and girls, to give them life skills to be self sufficient and successful agronomists. But today it is the country's largest youth development program. And we're proud to be part of 4-H. And I'm also going to give a shout out because 4-H has developed in a way that really respects students of all races. They embrace students regardless of gender identity or LGBTQ plus status. There's not there just aren't a lot of hurdles to making them useful to all different kinds of schools and all different kinds of kids. So land grant institutions are really fantastic ways, and university extensions, to get really good information. But a lot of our expertise also comes from being part of the Green Schools Quest, because students are provided mentors through that program. Deborah, you have been awesome about hooking people up with experts. And a funny story is that Emily, you'll like this. Deborah called me this last spring and was like, I have a school that has to relocate a hive. So I'm calling you so you have information. But it was Maplewood Richmond Heights Middle School, which is the school that helped train me as a beekeeper. And I'm like, we're all in this together. And this is beekeeping. Like, This is beekeeping, this is chicken keeping, this is gardening with kids. We're all a little bit expert, but we're going to figure it out together.
And you reminded me something, seeking those resources, but also something that's really, really important, especially right now, is national parks have so many educator resources. They have
Yep.
lessons made for you. The St. Louis Zoo has free education resources. The Department of Missouri Education or Education, Wildlife also does. Any of those sites, I think it's important that we use those too because they're already made. We don't have to do extra work, and those are already connecting out to nature for us, and also giving those national parks, our state parks, and educators the credit that they deserve for working really hard to develop those programs.
Mm-hmm.
So we actually have quite a few more questions, but we are beyond our time. So I'm gonna stop us here. Emily and Anne, I'm gonna email you these questions. Sorry to give you homework after you've already created your presentations. But I do want to throw up one more, just thank you for attending for everybody. And one more plug to visit us at showmegreenschools.org to make sure that if you're not connected to our programs yet, you should be. And if you have questions about it, please email me. I would love to chat with you and connect you to any resource that I can connect you to. I'm a former educator, so I'm very passionate about this work. And if I can take something off of your plate, I will. So thank you guys for attending. And Anne and Emily, thank you for your presentations, for inspiring all of us, and for giving us very practical tools of how to do this at other places. So thank y'all and have a great rest of your day.
It
Thank
was a
you.
pleasure. Thank you.
I'm going to stop recording.